Arab executive abandons his poor African wife. 17 years later, he finds her earning a fortune where he least expected. He was a rising Arab executive with ambition in his veins and the world at his feet. She was a humble African woman who had given him everything: loyalty, love, and even a child. But when wealth came knocking, he made a choice that would haunt him forever. He left her behind, convinced she'd only hold him back. 17 years later, a twist of fate brought them face to face. Not on the dusty roads of their past, but in a luxurious boardroom, where she now owned everything he thought was his. What she said to him shattered his pride, and what he discovered next left him on his knees. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will shake your soul and remind you of the power of destiny. Ready? Let's begin. 17 years ago, under the scorching sun of a remote village on the outskirts of Marrakesh, a young man named Karim al-Sayed stood at the edge of a dirt road with a leather bag in his hand and a decision in his heart that would shape the rest of his life. Karim was 28 at the time, sharp-suited even in the dust, with eyes that held hunger not for food, but for power. Born into modesty but groomed for ambition, he had just received a once-in-a-lifetime offer from a top finance firm in Dubai. A real future, a real name. All he had to do was let go of his past. And his past stood right in front of him. Her name was Ayo. She was barefoot, wrapped in a simple fabric dress, holding their 2-year-old daughter, Lyanna, in her arms. Her dark skin glowed with sweat and heartbreak. Her eyes, deep and wide, searched his face as if still hoping he would change his mind. "You don't have to choose between them," she whispered. "You can have success and a family." Karim's jaw clenched. "Ayo, you don't understand how the world works. You think Dubai will accept me if I bring you and a child born out of wedlock? A woman with no papers, no education?" She flinched, but held his gaze. "And yet, I gave you everything, even when you had nothing." The wind blew, lifting the edge of her scarf. It reminded Karim of all those nights they had spent under tin roofs and flickering candles, of how she had nursed his fevers, washed his clothes, pushed him to study, prayed for his future. But in that moment, all he could see was his own reflection in the tinted window of the car that waited for him. "I'm sorry," he said, turning his back. "This is the only way." Ayo didn't cry. She simply pulled Lyanna close to her chest and watched as he walked away, not once looking back. That was the last time he saw them. Years passed. Karim became everything he dreamed of, a billionaire executive known in Dubai's elite circles. His name graced magazine covers. He flew private, dined with royalty, made ruthless deals by day, and broke hearts by night. But no matter how loud the applause, silence always greeted him when the lights went off. He never married, never had another child, and he never returned to that village until fate pulled a cruel trick on him. It was during a high-profile merger with a Pan-African tech conglomerate. Karim, now 45, was poised to acquire their holding company. He stepped into the boardroom of a sleek Nairobi skyscraper, expecting to meet a man of status. But when the doors opened, his world stopped. There she stood, Ayo, dressed in a tailored navy suit, hair wrapped in a regal scarf, gold earrings glinting in the light. She was every inch a CEO. Her eyes were still deep, still powerful, but now they were unreadable. Karim's breath caught. Ayo. Her lips curled into a controlled smile. Mr. Al-Sayed, welcome to my company. He felt the room spin. 17 years ago, he had left her in poverty. Now she stood in front of him, not just equal, but above him. His signature was no longer a gift. It was a request. And suddenly, every empire he had built seemed to tremble under her gaze. You look different, he murmured. I am different, she said. You taught me that. The silence that followed was electric. Somewhere deep inside him, shame twisted. He wanted to ask about Lyanna. He wanted to explain, to say he hadn't known, hadn't meant to abandon them forever. But he didn't speak. He couldn't. Ayo stepped forward, placed a contract on the table, and met his eyes. Let's begin, shall we? Karim sat across from her at the long obsidian table, pretending to study the acquisition documents in front of him. But his eyes kept drifting toward Ayo, the woman he had once left behind in the dust of his ambition. Now she was seated in a leather chair with her back straight and her voice commanding the room with quiet precision. She didn't flinch, didn't falter. She was no longer the girl who had begged him to stay. She was the one holding the pen now. He could barely hear the legal advisor's briefing as his mind flooded with questions. How had she gotten here? What path had led a woman with nothing, no status, no money, no support, to this towering office and billion-dollar company? That night, Karim skipped his hotel dinner and walked alone along the edges of Nairobi's business district. Lights glittered through the glass towers, but none of them offered answers. He needed to know, not because of pride, not even because of the deal, because somewhere beneath the surface, something inside him ached. So he did what he hadn't done in 17 years. He searched her name. Ayo Bakari, founder of Mwezi Tech, a Pan-African software firm specializing in education apps for low-income communities. Raised over $50 million in Series C funding. Partnered with schools across Kenya, Ghana, Ethiopia. Recognized by Forbes. Named African Woman of the Year last winter. Karim exhaled deeply. My God, she hadn't just survived. She had become a storm. The next morning, Karim arrived early to the office. Ayo wasn't there yet. As he sat at the edge of the conference table, one of her staff, a young man in his 20s with skin the color of his own, walked in with coffee and paused when he saw him. "Good morning, sir," the young man said politely. Karim nodded. "You work with Ms. Bakari?" The man smiled proudly. "Yes, she changed my life, gave me my first laptop, my first internship, taught me how to believe in myself." Karim tilted his head. "You speak of her like a mother." "I guess in many ways she is." He laughed lightly, then turned serious. "She's done more for people like me than our own leaders. You're lucky to work with her now." The young man left the room, but his words lingered. A mother. Karim felt that ache again, like an old wound reopening beneath his ribs. And when Ayo finally entered, elegant as ever in her cream blouse and camel-toned trousers, Karim rose. "I owe you more than a business proposal," he said. She didn't slow her steps. "I don't need apologies." "It's not just an apology, Ayo. I want to understand how you got here." She paused, then turned her gaze to him. "Why now? Because you're impressed?" "No," he replied softly. "Because I'm ashamed." That cracked something. She inhaled, then walked to the window overlooking the city. "The day you left, I thought I would die. I had no job, no help, and a daughter who kept asking why her father disappeared." Karim felt the sting of her words. "I worked cleaning houses at first, then sewing. Then I met an old teacher who remembered I used to love math. He gave me a job at a school. I started coding at night, built a small app to teach children Swahili. It went viral, investors came, but none of it came easy." "I should have been there," he said, voice barely audible. "Yes," she replied, eyes glinting with pain. "You should have." A long silence fell between them. Then Karim asked the question that had haunted him most. "And Lyanna?" Ayo's expression shifted. "She's here. She's the company's lead developer. You'll meet her soon." Karim's heart skipped. "She's grown?" "She's 19, and brilliant, just like you were." That hit him harder than any insult could. "I want to see her," he said. "Talk to her." "She doesn't know who you are yet," Ayo warned. "And I won't force her to meet the man who disappeared before her 3rd birthday." Karim nodded. "Then let me earn the chance." Ayo studied him long and hard, then finally spoke. "We'll see." And just like that, the power shifted again. Not through contracts, not through wealth, but through the silent grace of a woman who had risen from ashes. Karim arrived early again, not out of habit this time, but out of nerves. The boardroom was quiet, the documents already reviewed, the business terms settled. Yet he found himself pacing, unable to focus on the acquisition anymore. What did it matter? The real contract he wished to sign was far more delicate, and no lawyer could help him write it. He was about to meet his daughter, not as a father, but as a stranger. When the door opened, Karim turned swiftly, and there she was, Lyanna. She was tall, with warm brown skin, and a presence that matched her mother's. Her hair was pulled into a high puff, and she wore jeans and a fitted T-shirt that read, "Code like a Queen." A leather tablet case was slung over her shoulder, and her confidence filled the room long before she even spoke. "Mr. Al-Sayed," she said, her tone professional but distant. Karim cleared his throat. "Yes. Lyanna?" She nodded and offered a firm handshake. "My mother said you wanted a technical overview of the educational software package. I brought a live demo." He froze for a second. Her voice, her posture, her mind. Everything about her radiated brilliance. But it was the curve of her eyes that broke him. They were his. She had his exact gaze. He sat slowly, trying to steady his voice. "Yes, of course. Please, show me." She opened her tablet and launched the application. As she walked him through the features, interactive language modules, remote access tools for rural schools, AI-powered grading, Karim barely heard a word. He was mesmerized by the way she spoke, the way she gestured when she was passionate about something. "This is my daughter," he thought, "and she has no idea. Each feature is scalable," she was saying, "and we've already implemented it across 63 schools in West Africa. Our goal is to reach 200 by next year." "That's impressive," he said, stunned. "Truly." "Thank you," she replied with a small, polite smile. "We're proud of what we've built, especially considering where we started." Karim swallowed hard. He wanted to ask, "Do you remember me? Do you know who I am?" But he couldn't bring himself to say the words. Ayo entered the room just then, carrying a folder, her eyes scanning them both. She gave nothing away. "I assume the presentation was thorough," she said, taking a seat. Karim nodded. "She's exceptional." "She always has been," Ayo said, glancing at her daughter with pride. Lyanna smiled, but looked a little confused, sensing something in the room that hadn't been spoken aloud. Ayo turned to her. "Could you give us a moment, sweetheart?" Lyanna closed her tablet, stood up, and gave Karim one last courteous nod. "It was nice meeting you, Mr. Al-Sayed." He watched her walk out, a weight pressing down on his chest. When the door closed, Karim turned to Ayo. "She doesn't know. She knows her father left. She knows he had an opportunity and chose not to come back. But she doesn't know what he looks like. I never showed her your face." Karim leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Please let me tell her. I'll take the blame. I'll tell her everything." Ayo's eyes softened just for a second. "And what then? You expect her to embrace you?" "No," he whispered. "I don't expect anything. But she deserves to know the truth." Ayo looked at him long and hard, then finally said, "If you want to speak to her, you'll do it my way. No surprises, no drama. She's been through enough." He nodded. "Anything you ask?" Later that evening, Karim sat in the garden terrace of his hotel, sipping a glass of mint tea, the Nairobi skyline twinkling in the distance. His phone buzzed. A message from Ayo. "Tomorrow, 5 p.m., our home. She's ready to hear what you have to say." His fingers trembled slightly as he set the phone down. He wasn't sure if he'd ever felt fear like this. Not in billion-dollar negotiations. Not in the face of political leaders. But this wasn't business. This was the soul he had abandoned. And tomorrow, he would face it. The next day, as the golden sun dipped toward the horizon, Karim stood in front of a modest but beautiful home, nestled in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Nairobi. The gate was open. A single bougainvillea vine, curled around the front post, and the air smelled faintly of jasmine. There were no guards, no marble fountains, no extravagance, just warmth. He hesitated before stepping inside, heart pounding harder than during any boardroom deal. Io opened the door herself, dressed in a soft gray dress with rolled sleeves. There was no jewelry, no makeup, just the elegance of truth. She looked at him not as an ex-lover or as a billionaire, but as the man she once trusted and the man who had broken that trust. "She's in the study," Io said simply. "She knows you're coming." Karim nodded, forcing his legs to move. The house was lined with bookshelves, photos of school children, awards from tech conferences. On the mantel, he spotted a framed picture of Io and Lyanna when she was perhaps 10, grinning with missing teeth, a science fair ribbon in her hand. His chest tightened. He reached the doorway of the study. Lyanna sat in a high-backed chair with a cup of tea beside her. Her expression was calm but unreadable. Io left them alone, closing the door softly behind her. "Would you like to sit?" Lyanna said, gesturing to the couch across from her. Karim did, slowly, clasping his hands together to keep them from shaking. There was a silence that stretched for too long. Finally, she broke it. "My mother said you have something to tell me, that you wanted to tell me for a long time." He nodded. "Yes, I do." She looked him in the eye. "Are you my father?" It hit like a punch. He wanted to deny it, not because it wasn't true, but because hearing it aloud made it real, raw. "Yes," he said. "I am." She blinked once. "Why didn't you ever come back?" Karim leaned forward. "Because I was a coward. I thought chasing success meant I had to leave everything else behind. I told myself it was necessary, that I was building a future. But the truth is, I was afraid. Of failure, of rejection, of how people would see me if I brought my past with me." Lyanna folded her arms, lips pressed tight. "So you just left, without even saying goodbye?" "I told your mother I was sorry, but that wasn't enough. I know that now." "She never showed me your picture," Lyanna said. "Never bad-mouthed you. She just told me you had to go, that you were chasing something." Karim's throat closed. "She protected you from the worst of me." "Yes," Lyanna said, her voice trembling slightly. "She did." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, worn photograph. It was faded from years of being carried, the corners soft. It showed Io holding a baby, Lyanna, and Karim standing behind them, his hand on Io's shoulder. It was the only photo they had taken together, back when they thought forever was possible. "I carried this with me for 17 years, he said. "But it didn't stop me from making the worst mistake of my life." Lyanna stared at the photo for a long time, then looked up. "Do you want to be in my life now?" Karim hesitated. "Only if you'll let me. I'm not asking to be your father. I don't expect to earn that title overnight. But if there's even a sliver of space in your world for me, I want to fill it." Lyanna's eyes shimmered. "You missed everything. My first words, my first steps, my first heartbreak. I know. You don't deserve forgiveness. I know that too. But," she said quietly, "maybe you deserve a chance to try." Karim swallowed hard, tears welling in his eyes. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a while, not the silence of strangers, but something new, something rebuilding. When Ao peeked in, she saw them both sitting there, a foot apart, but something deeper already beginning to close the distance. Ao didn't say anything. She just smiled, small, private, knowing. Because sometimes life has its own way of bringing things full circle, and this story was far from over. The following week, Karim found himself returning to that same house more often than he ever expected. It no longer felt like an obligation or a penance. It felt like something sacred. A second chance, not just with his daughter, but with the part of himself he had buried for almost 2 decades. Lyanna had not yet called him Dad. And he didn't ask her to, but they spoke. About coding, about the music she liked, about the non-profit work she did in rural Tanzania. She even made fun of how badly he held a tablet. And he laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. Io mostly kept to herself, observing him with cautious eyes. She never said whether she believed he could stay. She had learned long ago not to believe in permanence. But one morning, Karim showed up with something that changed everything. It was a signed letter, notarized, legally binding. "What is this?" Ao asked, reading over it slowly in the kitchen. "It's a full transfer of 22% of my private company shares into a trust under Lyanna's name," he said calmly. Io blinked, stunned. "This is a fortune." "It's her birthright," he replied. "What I never gave her before: opportunity, security, protection. I know it can't undo anything, but it's a start." "And what do you expect in return?" she asked sharply. "Nothing," he said. "I mean that." She stared at the document for a long moment, then at him. "You really changed." "I lost so much chasing wealth," he said. "Now, I want to give it to someone who didn't ask for anything and still turned into gold." For a time, things seemed to bloom. Karim and Lyanna were seen at several tech events. Investors began to buzz. "Is this the rise of a father-daughter empire?" headlines asked. Io stayed in the background, watching with both pride and hesitation. Part of her believed it, believed maybe, just maybe, people could change. But fate wasn't done with them yet. It happened on a rainy Thursday. Io received a message from one of her board members. a concerned email titled, "Urgent, Media Leak Incoming." Attached was a scanned photo from 17 years ago. It was Karim, holding hands with a woman in Dubai. A wedding ceremony. Lavish. Obvious. Dated just 3 months after he had left her. Ayo's heart dropped. She had always assumed he had left for success. But this was betrayal on a level she hadn't let herself imagine. He hadn't just abandoned her. He had replaced her. She rushed to her office and pulled out an old notebook, one where she had written down Lyanna's birth records, letters never sent, emotions never spoken. Her hand trembled as she flipped the pages. Everything came rushing back. The cold nights, the empty crib, the child asking why Daddy doesn't come home. She thought of Lyanna, of how she was beginning to open her heart, of how Karim had sat in their home, drinking her tea, pretending to be something new. Ayo couldn't breathe. She dialed him. He picked up quickly. "Ayo, we need to talk," she said. "Now." He arrived at the house soaked from the rain, but when he saw her face, he knew something had shattered. "What is it?" he asked. She dropped the printed photo on the table. Karim froze. "You married someone else?" Ayo asked, her voice eerily calm. "3 months after leaving me?" His throat tightened. "Ayo, it wasn't what you think. Don't insult me. I thought you'd be fine. I didn't think I mattered that much to you. We weren't." "Don't say we weren't serious," she snapped. "I gave birth to your daughter, Karim." He looked down, ashamed. That marriage, it ended years ago. It was arranged, political, empty. But you still did it. I was a fool. She stared at him. I trusted you, again. I let you in my house, near my child. And the whole time you sat there with half a heart. "No," he said quickly. "I never stopped thinking about you. Or her. That marriage meant nothing compared to what I lost." "But you didn't lose us, Karim," she said coldly. "You threw us away." Her voice cracked, and then she turned her back. "If you care about Lyanna, you'll let me be the one to tell her. You've hurt her enough." Karim stood frozen in the doorway, watching the only 2 people who ever truly knew him slip further out of reach. For days, Karim heard nothing. No messages, no calls, not even a forwarded article or board meeting invite. Lyanna had vanished from his life as quickly as she had entered it, and Ayo had closed the door as tightly as she had once opened it. Every attempt he made, every email, every soft knock at their gate, went unanswered. The silence was a punishment. And it was working. He stood in the penthouse suite of the Intercontinental, surrounded by glass and gold, and felt completely alone. The wealth that had once given him power now mocked him. The city lights stretched below like a kingdom he no longer belonged to. Everything looked small from up here, especially him. Then came the inevitable. The headline: Arab executive's secret daughter. Nairobi tech prodigy linked to scandal. It exploded online within hours. Bloggers picked it up. Photos of Karim and Lyanna at the expo surfaced. Speculation swirled. Had he abandoned her? Had he bought her silence? Was this all just another calculated move? Karim's phone wouldn't stop ringing. But the call he dreaded most came from his own board. "We can't afford this kind of attention," said the chairman over speakerphone. "We're preparing a public statement. You'll need to step back from the front-facing role for now." "I built this company," Karim snapped, "and we're protecting it. Take a temporary leave, Al-Sayed, for everyone's sake." Click. He sank into the leather chair, numb. All the success he had chased, all the power, the money, the influence, none of it could help him now. He had tried to be a better man, to reclaim something real, and once again it had slipped through his fingers. But this time, he couldn't blame the world. This time, it was his doing. Meanwhile, Lyanna sat in her mother's home, tears silently running down her cheeks. Io hadn't said much when she broke the news. Just the facts. Just the truth. Her father had left for Dubai. He hadn't just vanished. He had married another woman, started a new life, chosen something else. Lyanna couldn't process it. How could he stand in front of me and act like I was everything? She whispered. Io placed a hand on her shoulder. Because maybe to him, you are now. But people like Karim, they don't always tell the truth when they're ashamed. But he made me believe, Lyanna said, wiping her face angrily. He made me feel like I mattered. You do matter, Io said. You always did, with or without him. Lyanna looked up. Then why did you let him in again? Io hesitated. Because I hoped he had changed, and for a while, I think he had. But the past has a way of catching up. Lyanna's voice cracked. I don't know what hurts more, the fact that he left, or the fact that I still want him to stay. Io pulled her close and held her. That's not weakness, baby. That's love. 3 days later, Io stepped outside to find Karim sitting on the curb in front of their house. It was raining. He was soaked through, but he didn't move. His eyes were red, his clothes wrinkled. The man who had once ruled boardrooms now looked like someone who had lost everything. Io didn't speak. He stood when he saw her. I'm not here to make excuses, he said. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know. If I could go back to that moment 17 years ago, I wouldn't walk away. I wouldn't choose ambition over family. She crossed her arms, silent. I hurt you, he said. I hurt her, and I will carry that for the rest of my life. But I'm still here, not because I want redemption, but because I finally see what matters. Io's eyes softened. You think showing up in the rain makes it right? No, he said quietly, but it's all I have left to offer. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she opened the gate. I'm not doing this for you, she said. I'm doing it for her. Karim nodded. That's enough. As he stepped inside, soaked to the bone and stripped of every illusion, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt human. And for once in his life, that was exactly what he needed to be. Lyanna didn't speak to Karim for a full week after his last visit. Not a word, not a text. But late one night she found something on her desk. A handwritten letter, folded once, with her name in thick, familiar script. She hesitated before opening it. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Lyanna. I know that. But I wanted you to know who I was before I became a coward. Your mother saw something in me when I was broken and afraid. And you remind me of everything I lost. If you choose to never speak to me again, I will understand. But if you leave the door open, just an inch, I will never stop trying to be worthy of your trust. You are the greatest thing I've ever helped create. There were no signatures, just a small pressed photo of the three of them, years ago. Io, Lyanna, and him. Tears blurred the edges. For the first time in days, her anger softened. Weeks later, Io's company held its largest public conference yet. Hundreds of young African developers packed the auditorium, eager to hear from Lyanna, the genius behind the latest expansion. As she stepped on stage, her voice was strong. This isn't just about code. It's about rebuilding, about giving people the tools to shape the future they were once denied. In the front row, Karim watched with silent pride. He didn't approach. He didn't force a conversation. But when her eyes briefly met his in the crowd, she didn't look away. And for him, that was everything. One Sunday afternoon, as rain tapped gently against the windows, Karim heard a knock at his apartment door. He opened it slowly. Lyanna stood there, arms crossed, hair tied back. I don't know what this is going to be, she said. I don't know if I'm ready to call you Dad, but I'm willing to try, if you are. Karim nodded, tears quietly forming. I am. She stepped inside, and with that single act, the past wasn't erased. But the future, finally, had a place to begin. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes, the strongest love isn't the one we start with. It's the one we fight to rebuild.